our interactions with fish, like I really hope more people see it as a privilege and not a right.
Yeah.
And I think if we treated our interactions with fish as a privilege, we would hopefully be more inclined to, think about those science-based best practices and how we release them, or thinking about being advocates for their environment and other things.
Well, unusual setting. We're on the banks of the Paraná River, but Andy, welcome to the Flylords Podcast.
Joseph, thank you very much.
I know, it's great. We had this idea, I think, halfway through the trip. We're 2 weeks in. We've had quite a long time here at all the different set fly fishing lodges, but those who don't know you, you're a professor of environmental conservation.
I'm a professor of fish conservation.
Fish conservation.
In the Department of Environmental Conservation.
See, there's a reason I'm not an academic. But at UMass Amherst,
correct.
You're a dad, you're
Yep.
a fisherman, science advisor for Keep Fish Wet, Patagonia fly fishing ambassador. You're on the Indy Fly board.
Yep.
It's been amazing, hanging out with you all week. It's been so much fun. We're enjoying some Fernet and Cokes, which is classic.
Absolutely.
Argentinian beverage, but would love to. I know I kind of went ahead and introed a lot of you, but would love to hear a little bit more about who you are and where you're from, and why are we sitting across from each other right now?
Wow, that's a long. How much time do we have?
I mean, it's 10:30 right now. I mean, we could just stay here till breakfast at 5:30. I don't care.
Grew up in Southern Ontario, outside of Toronto. I'm a Canadian kid, and connected with nature at a pretty young age, and found it as a good way to escape maybe some screwed up realities, and managed to connect with fish. And always had this desire to stay connected to fish. And when I was growing up around the Great Lakes, I also, when I was fishing a lot, it dawned on me how we were not only enjoying going fishing, but the state of the environment was going to the This was, this is back in the 70s and 80s when, PCBs and all this other stuff were running rampant. And I remember going, Minister of Natural Resources had this almost like a little textbook, and you went lake by lake, and it had these color-coded fish about, if you're pregnant, don't eat any of these things. And if you're eating this, if you want to eat this fish, only eat like one every 2 months because of mercury and all this other stuff. And I was like, how can we, embrace this idea of really enjoying to go out and fish and be in nature, and also being like so mean to the environment and mean to fish? And, along the way, when I eventually dragged myself out of high school and found a university that would take me in, basically. I was a pretty crappy student in high school.
You were saying you pretty much, earlier this week, you are shocked you graduated.
Oh, yeah. I'm shocked I graduated. I'm shocked that I'm alive. And, I had to shop around for undergraduate universities that would take me because my grades were very polarized. I was getting A's in biology and art and geography, and squeaking by in math and English and history and stuff. And was gravitated to going to university. Nobody else in my family did. And I saw a path to, focusing in on the environment and things like that. Got into one university. It wasn't a good fit. Was lucky enough to go visit another university at the time. It was relatively small, called Trent University. And it allowed me to focus very early in my academic career on fish. And I was like, wow, you could actually have a career focused on fish.
Yeah.
This is really rad.
And here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. You know, and it was like massive. Again, you know, it's never a straight line. I remind my students of that. You know, no matter how much you sort of set your goals and you think you see the target at the end, in life, it's never a straight shot, right? And so, and then, you know, as one thing led to another, and I ended up at UMass, and have a lab, not really a lab, it's more like a storage space, because most of my research is done out in the field. And I teach a big course every fall in fish conservation. When I first adopted that course, it had like 60 or 70 students, and now I'm up to 150 to 180 students every fall.
Is that like a freshman class?
Sophomore level course.
It's like the class you go freshman year, you meet all these people. I mean, I'm not too far out of college. Like, there's the classes that you're like, all right, well, this satisfies my requirements of some sort. Yeah, and I've heard this professor's awesome, and I heard this class is fun, so I want to get in that class.
That might be part of it. And, you know, I don't like traditional classroom settings. You know, I consider myself a bit more of I teach through storytelling and experiences and sharing experiences, and try to get the students that I work with to visualize and immerse themselves in their own experiences and reflect on their lives and their place on the planet and their place with fish and how that enters their lives. And so I maybe teach in a slightly different, atypical way, and students tend to gravitate towards that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So you like to teach in experiences. Let's take a step back. Let's go back years and years and talk about where all those experiences come from. And you left college, you pursued academics.
Yep.
That whole process gets you to starting some research. Like, you're mainly in recreational fisheries research.
For about the last 20 years, focusing on recreationally targeted species. I do some work on sharks as well. So it's kind of an overlap in terms of recreational fisheries is a broad umbrella. And then under that, I do some stress physiology, I do some movement ecology. For the Golden Dorado project here, I'm collaborating with some folks that are geneticists, and we bring genetics to the table as a tool to understand how fish are connected to their environment and how their populations are structured.
Yeah.
And so, you know, broadly focusing on recreationally targeted species, yes. But there's other things in the mix too. So
yeah.
Sharks are cool.
What led you to want to lean into recreational fisheries? Like, what we all are doing, and most of the people that listen to this are pursuing, like, angling in a recreational manner.
For
like,
sure.
What led you to want to pursue that?
Yeah. As I was finishing up my PhD, so my master's and my PhD weren't on recreationally targeted species. I was looking at the impacts for my PhD, the impacts of forest harvesting on fish populations in northern Alberta. And I then moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands. I got a job down there, which was pretty cool. And I'd known about, and because I've been fishing prior to that, I knew about bonefish, and it was pretty cool. And the Turks and Caicos Islands, that was back in 2000. It's a pretty remote and unique place to go fishing for bonefish. And taught myself how to fly fish there. And caught my first fish on a fly rod, which was a bonefish on a fly that I tied myself.
No way.
Yeah. And it was...
Tell me more about that moment. Like, what led you to want to learn how to fly fish? What
Yeah.
Like, why tie your own fly for that first fish?
Yeah.
That's
for sure. So when I got to South Caicos, there was an outfitter that was just starting up using an airboat to go cruise around the Caicos Flats targeting bonefish.
An airboat.
An airboat. Yeah. And so he'd take out, 4 clients in an airboat, because you have got 45 square miles of sand flats. Mm-hmm. And you're using the airboat to search that area, and you're looking for bonefish, and then you see bonefish off in the distance, and you stop the airboat, and people would get out, and anglers would get out and wade. And so I got to experience that. I got to see that. And the guy's name, and I'm still good friends with him, is Bebo Jane. And I remember he took me out without clients, and I remember watching him fly fish. And the first fish I saw in person being caught on a fly rod was, at least in that experience, in that setting, was a bonefish, and it was about 7 pounds. And I was like, holy shit, it's really cool.
It's a big bone.
And I'm like, I want to do that. And so I got into fly fishing and as an angler, and then I also put my scientist hat on, and I'm like, what do we know about bonefish? And back in 2000, there was a small handful of papers on movement patterns and ecology and diet of bonefish. And then I was like, okay, so, I remember fishing the flats and seeing how bonefish responded to being caught and released, and watching sharks come in and trying to whack them and stuff. And I was like, well, if we're going to take responsibility as anglers, if I'm going to be, catching or releasing bonefish and other species, I want to know what's best for those fish if I'm going to let them go. And started digging into the science behind catch and release. And at the time, that was back in 2000, a pretty influential journal article came out by some friends of mine, colleague at University of Calgary, called The Invisible Collapse. And it was a paper that looked at some recreational fisheries in Alberta. I think most of it in Alberta. I think one was in BC. But how we weren't really monitoring recreational fisheries. And over time, participation rates were going up in these lakes, and catch rates were going down. And there were no commercial fishing. There was no commercial fisheries in those lakes. And it was like a wake-up call in that, that recreational angling can have an impact on fish populations. And that, for me, was a big starting point for this recognition that there needs to be this sub-discipline in fisheries science that focuses on recreational fisheries. And then based on the fact that a lot of management revolves around catch and release. If you've got size regulations, if you've got a closed season, all that stuff, like you're catching and releasing, you have to based on management. And then there's this growing sort of conservation ethos that you don't want to harvest every fish, or you don't want to harvest any fish. You want to go out for the experience. And so that sort of started to really steer the direction of my research and my interests in terms of looking at how fish respond to catch and release, and then how do they also then at the same time interact with their environment and move through space and time, so you can make connections to habitat and other environmental impacts. And really generally the overarching theme of what I do is look at my research is to understand how fish populations respond to natural and anthropogenic disturbance. And for the last 20 years, it's been focusing on recreational fisheries. Yeah. And and then that kind of hits
for those who aren't as science savvy, anthropogenic,
human generated impacts. Anthropogenic, so whether it's angling, which is a disturbance, like for my PhD, forest harvesting, I did a contract for Environment Canada, looking at the impacts of pulp and paper discharge on fish populations. So any sort of human-based disturbance is anthropogenic. Yeah.
What do you feel your impact's been on like the general angling population from some of those projects?
I mean, I want to back up a little bit, and I also feel really strongly about collaboration. And very rarely is the research that I do is in a vacuum. And so I've got amazing grad students and postdoctoral fellows, and then a wonderful network of collaborators at different universities that we sort of rally together and focus on some of these questions that may not always, you mentioned fly fishing. A lot of the projects don't always just include fly fishing. We're working on conventional tackle fisheries and things like that. I think that, over the years, the research that we've done has filled some important sort of gaps in knowledge. And because of the extra step that many of us take, we don't kind of trap that information in the scientific journals.
Organic Argentinian moments right here.
We make the extra effort to not trap that information in the scientific journals behind paywalls. We want to make sure that that information is put to good use and put into the hands of anglers or nonprofits or whoever can use it to make a difference when it comes to the species that they target.
You say a lot, like I've heard it a lot this week where we've been fishing, spending time together, this idea of science-based best practices. And that sounds a lot like that. It's like you're not hiding. Like when I was doing research for this podcast, there's a lot of information on you all over the internet, and a lot of it is scientific journals and publications and stuff like that. And my ass was not reading all of those things.
No.
Because
one, pretty boring as
they're not in a language that I like to understand. The car alarm's still going off. We love it. We're having a good time. But it's in a language I don't feel like I understand. But then you look at the stickers you've been passing around to the guides at all the 3 lodges we've been to this week, and that's distilled down into something that makes sense and digestible, and I think it's really cool. I think those types of things, and people want to be informed, but they also want to see, like a lot of times I feel like most people want to see, all right, well then why?
Well, and going back to the whole point of the science, using science as the foundation, is that you hope that it's done objectively, that you're testing hypotheses, you're using a scientific method that is not biased, and the outcome is the outcome. Right. And then if you base the best practices on those outcomes, and you're able to demonstrate that if you do X versus Y, X is going to create a better outcome for the fish when you handle it and release it, then if you translate that information and you put it in the hands of anglers, they can feel confident that if they're doing X versus Y, when they see a fish swim away, they're like, I actually can contribute to conservation. I'm doing a good thing, not only by letting the fish go, but I'm doing it in such a way that it's swimming away in the best condition possible. Right. And so I think, and I've been, I feel fortunate, to work with collaborators that have that same mindset. We spend a lot of time doing the education and outreach. That's something that I get some credit for as a university professor, but it's only a small sliver of what I'm technically paid for. And so, I think it takes a little bit additional, I don't know whether it's drive or, I think for me, I find it more of a sense of responsibility. that, I grew up fishing. Fishing is an important part of my life. And I feel that I have a responsibility to give back with the science and do it so in such a way so that when people practice catch and release, or they think about the movement patterns of the fish that they're targeting, and we've identified certain habitats that they live in, then they can advocate for protection of that habitat because there's some scientific evidence behind it. And I'm not saying that anecdotes are, anglers have tons of different anecdotes, and some of them might be valid and some of them are just, wives' tales. And, we should still pay attention to them, but if we think they have merit, then we should test them scientifically. A recent one that we kind of busted was this whole adage that, and it shows up on social media, twice a year, that milkfish they fight for so long because they don't build up blood lactate, the stuff that gives you cramps, because they're vegetarians. That's the adage. I've seen it on social media a couple times a year, and we're like, biologically, physiologically, that's impossible. It doesn't make sense, but let's go and test it. And so we used a scientific method. We did some physiology on some milkfish that we caught and demonstrated that they do build up blood lactate, just like other fish do. They might do something funky when there are really long fight times. They might start to recover. But we're at least able to use science to sort of debunk that. And that is then fed into the best practices that were shared with the lodges that target milkfish. And that plays a role in terms of how the guides work with their clients and how they fight the milkfish in order to make sure that the milkfish are not as impacted by the fight.
That leads into something that definitely wanted to talk about, because it's a place that is on my bucket list. It's on probably everyone's bucket list. Most people, like, you hear that song come up on Spotify from Cosmo, the Yeti film, and you think about the Seychelles, and you're like, got it. Like, I've got to somehow find a way to get there, and I'm just like put away a little bit every year, save up for that trip. But part of your research there, working on GTs and bonefish and milkfish, I do want to hear the story again about when you were working down there and you almost died. Has it been multiple times?
No,
just that time.
Well, there's the time that I also got drugged I got roofied. So there's been a couple close calls in the Seychelles. The one close call is we had we were doing some work offshore with milkfish, and the conditions were bad, and we had a flat skiff turtle.
Got a little sporty.
But the crew there, the Alphonse Fishing Company crew, they knew what to do, and they saved our asses. But yeah, it's, I feel really fortunate, very fortunate to have research projects in amazing places like the Seychelles or here in Argentina, or, I've done stuff in Christmas Island and other places. And, for as much as those places were on my bucket list, I really pride myself in the fact that those projects develop because of people approaching me. And we start to have a conversation. I remember it vividly when Keith Rose Innes from Alphonse Fishing Company, Blue Safari, reached out, and he said, listen, I see what you do in other places. We've got a really pristine, what we think is a pristine fishery with GTs and milkfish and triggerfish and Indo-Pacific permit and all these other cool things. And he said that, I pride myself in thinking about the impact that we're having on these fish. And I want to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable. And so we started a conversation about doing some science. Started out with a project on GTs. And then not long after that, there's an organization called the Island Conservation Society that has rangers and conservation staff on some of the atolls, and I was able to work with the Island Conservation Society to write a grant to raise some money to do that science. And it's an amazing partnership between, this for-profit company, this NGO in the Seychelles, a government agency called the Seychelles Fishing Authority. They were involved. I raised some money from BTT. They were involved. I brought in one of my collaborators, and so it was great that we're able to bring this partnership together. But the questions and the impetus for the research came from people interested in making sure what they were doing from a recreational angling standpoint was sustainable for their home waters and their home species. And I like that approach because it means that we can then use science in an objective way and hopefully feed that information back to the stakeholders so that they can use that information. So it doesn't get trapped. Yes, we still, as a scientist, as a university scientist, part of the currency in terms of how I ultimately get promoted from, one stage of a professor to another is through the publications. And so I have to do that, write the boring journal articles and things like that. We do that. We've done that with the projects in the Seychelles, but at the same time, because of the nature of the team that we have, we're able to translate that information and share it with the research partners and with other stakeholders so that they can do something that can help shape conservation and management for those fisheries. And it's been a great model, and it's one that it's also why I'm here.
Yeah.
Where it was a year and a half ago, or might have been even longer than that, where the guys from Set Fly Fishing reached out and they said, listen, we know that you've done some work on Golden Dorado before. We've got a crazy cool fishery. And we're concerned. We want to know more about the movement ecology. We want to know more about, the role Golden Dorado play in this ecosystem. They've got some different habitats. And so, I spent a lot of time going back and forth via email. So what are your questions? What do you want to try to do? And often, and they did too, like, we want to start to tag fish. I'm like, why do you want to tag fish?
Yeah.
What are the questions? Let's pick the right tools for the questions. And so,
when we first met with you, when we were coming down, we're doing this whole, I don't know when the podcast will come out versus the videos, but we're doing this video series.
Yep.
That's what's really cool about Set is they reached out to us, wanted us to do some stuff about Dorado, and it's not about the lodge.
Right.
It's about the species. It's about educating people, and like you've said, like people hear you say potentially in the films, and I've heard you say all week, it's like that authenticity and like true care for the fish. Like that's why you pick certain projects over others or pursue things, because anyone's time is valuable.
Yeah.
And you want to do things that you're passionate about, and we're lucky enough to work in a passion industry and like do things we love. But we've seen it. This place is unreal.
Yeah.
We've had a
It's pretty crazy.
pretty awesome 2 weeks. We can probably start talking about that.
Yep.
But like, I think the reason you're here is you've been doing this Golden Dorado Genetics and Genome Project.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is pretty epic. It's funded by the IGFA,
Yep.
right? And you've done work in many countries in South America focusing on, are there multiple different species of Golden Dorado? And like anything, it just started with a question.
Yep. And also the question too, going back to disturbance. We mentioned human and anthropogenic and natural disturbance, right? So, where Golden Dorado inhabit in the neotropics, where we are, in South America, it's not immune to that's happening. It's not immune to climate change. It's not immune to dams. Dams are here for based on agreements. They're decades old, and dams going, and there isn't, there may or may not have been an adequate environmental assessment. They might have not have really worried about it because there's a demand for power production. At some point in our evolution of human societies, we thought dams were really good.
Yeah. And
they were green, and they're not, right? And they fragment habitats. They actually accelerate climate change.
Taking a pause for a second, when you say fragment habitat, can you dive a little deeper into what that means?
Yeah, I mean, there's, when you've got a great example, you've got this migratory species, Golden Dorado, that, that go up big river systems and they move. At least we have some evidence of that. And then you put a dam in the way.
Yeah.
Right? And you've fragmented their habitat. You've created a barrier. And often the default is to put a fish ladder, and there's lots of evidence that those fish ladders don't necessarily work. And what that does is it impacts gene flow. It may trap some Golden Dorado above the dam and have some down below, and over time they don't mix, they don't reproduce anymore together. And so when we think about the broad scale of the Golden Dorado populations, how widely distributed they are, there's different things going on in the environment. There's the dams. When I was did research on the Rio Jodimento, that there's also water diversions. There are, I remember seeing a backhoe driving into the river and just like digging a channel and diverting water into, some agricultural land. I think it was, I don't know, I can't remember if it was legal or illegal, probably illegal. But that's all of a sudden just diverting water, and it's changing the course of the water flow. We don't know what that's doing for sedimentation, how that's impacting the fish. And so, and I think it's important to think about these fragmentations of habitat, especially if we don't understand what the essential habitats are for Golden Dorado, for instance. It's for such an iconic species, there's some research done on them, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And so when the set fly fishing guys approached me with some interesting questions, I sort of overlaid that on top of the existing project, looking at using genetics and genomics to understand population structure, and how those populations might be connected or they might be isolated. That project that was funded by IGFA, the genetics and genomics, can already start to inform some of the questions that are emerging related to this upcoming project, as soon as we raise enough money to look at movement patterns.
Yeah, and you'd fished for Dorado before.
Yep.
Half of our team that's here has, and I haven't.
Yeah.
And coming down here, we started like our whole trip timeline. We flew into BA, and then we all did like epic dinner in BA, and the dollar goes so far here, like crazy
Yep.
steak dinner. It was awesome. And the set people organized everything. It was awesome. Flew here to Itatí. Well, we flew to Corrientes, drove
Yep.
to Itatí, and we started in the upper Paraná River,
Yeah.
which is like throwing you into like hard fishing. And like my experience of Golden Dorado has always been like, you look on Instagram and you see like Bolivian Golden Dorado and that like really tight walkway,
Yep.
smaller rivers, really crystal clear water, and you see that fish just explode. And here, other than like maybe the James River in Virginia, I've never seen a river that wide.
It's an immense
It's
system.
huge.
Yeah. But also what's kind of cool, when we first got here and we ran upstream and it was sunny and hot, we did have an opportunity to sight fish on those on the sandbanks.
That was my first fish.
Yeah.
They're literally foaming on sabalo in like water that's 5 inches deep.
Yeah.
And you see their backs come out of the water and they're just hunting in packs, going nuts. My first Dorado was like, I don't know, probably the coolest way to catch a Dorado. Like Max was like, dude, that's insane. Like this pack just herds all these sabalo together, which is the bait fish.
Yeah.
Kind of looks like a mullet, like a shad type thing. And they're just going, and they just are seeing red. And it's like, if you can get that fly in that pot of sabalo, it is getting munched. And totally bummed my first cast. It's like freaking out and like running down this sand flat. Andy, who's one of the owners, operators of sets, to my right, casting a different pack of Dorado, and like catch my breath, make the cast, and you like hit that wall and you're like, am I in freshwater right now?
I know. Isn't it crazy? But also in the same river, you're going down currents and you're casting, doing short casts to woody debris, right? Or you're then, depending on the time of day and the weather conditions, you're using a sink tip and you're drifting past rocks. Like, it's a crazy diversity of opportunities to target Golden Dorado on the Paraná, upper Paraná. And then you've got the potential for those big ass Dorado, like the monsters, right? You have the mix of the smaller Dorado, which are still incredibly fun to fish for on an 8-weight, a 9-weight. But then you get the bruisers, right? They're beasts, man. They're huge.
Yeah.
It was a very neat place to start our trip.
Yeah.
And end it, right? So
yeah, and we're ending it here, and we had some stuff in the middle.
Well, then we were just talking about the Ibera wetland.
Yeah.
Right? How like raw and wild that place was, and vast, right? And then it's not just the Golden Dorado, it's the Cayman and the Piranha and the diversity of birds.
Dude, fuck those piranhas. They practically ate up 2 fly boxes. But
man, like I was thrilled to still catch.
They look like Dorado.
Their
gill plate.
Awesome.
The
capybara. The capybara are rad. They're my new spirit animal. And then going to the Soto wetlands. And mind you, the water was low, but again, it's intricate. The 3 locations are very different, but Golden Dorado are there. Right?
Yeah.
And trying to understand the relevance of these different habitats to Golden Dorado, ecologically, and then the fact that they're now part of a recreational fishery is going back to this idea of like, how can we fill some knowledge gaps with doing some science to think about how we can interface with Golden Dorado as anglers, have businesses tied to that fishery, do it in such a way that it still creates revenue for local communities and keeps guides employed and everything, and it's done in a sustainable way so those fish can be around to be caught another day or continue to do what they do in the ecosystem. So
it's cool too to see like more on the conservation side of this species. Like, one, really cool to see how much the set folks care about the species. And like Andy will tell you, Gustavo will tell you, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. We just love what we do so much, and we want to protect these resources. And Andy talks about his kids, and I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I am a like self-taught angler, self-taught hunter, and for me, I want to be able to pass that on and for people to experience it. And that dream exists worldwide. It exists globally, and seeing the work they've done with local governments, seeing that the province we're in is no treble hooks, single hook, there's barbless.
Yep.
Like, you got to crimp your barbs, which honestly helps you you're trying to push into bone to hook this fish. Like, a barb there, it's a huge, I don't know, probably some people get mad about it, but like, barbless hooks do get a better hook set. So
and they also come out of your arm or your hand easier.
Yeah, I hooked myself a few times when the wind was blowing.
Yeah.
Like a couple, like 10, 15 miles an hour.
And there's science that supports it, so that, barbless hooks do less damage, and they, allow you to minimize handling time, tying back into those the science-based best practices from Keep Fish Wet, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a cool thing. Like, you want to build these handbooks for Keep Fish Wet. You're the science advisor for Keep Fish Wet, and Keep Fish Wet is a whole other podcast episode for one of us to sit down with your amazing wife, who's the executive director of Keep Fish Wet. So we'll save her some things to talk about with us.
Yep.
But for them to get a packet that kind of showcases what are the best science-based practices for this fishery.
Yep.
Honestly, the work that's already been done probably makes it easier to implement, or they might already be doing a lot of the things that are in those packets.
Yep. And so, Keep Fish Wet recently came out with toolkits for guides, shops, and lodges. And we collectively had a workshop. We invited guides and shop owners and lodge owners to basically help inform what would be the best components of a toolkit. What could they use to help spread the message and to help not educate. Keep Fish Wet doesn't like to use that term. It's more like empower or inform, because if you're, and I don't want to give away Sasha's, we talk about this stuff a lot. But the toolkits are, we see the guides and the shops and the lodges they're important facilitators, right? They see so many anglers, and there's a lot of social science that I've done with collaborators and other people have done that show that anglers learn from one another more than from other sources, and they trust in learning from guides, and they go to shops and they go to lodges like this one, and it's important for the guides to set a good standard, and if Keep Fish Wet can provide that science-based best practices, and have opportunities for the guides to share that information both formally and informally. That's what those toolkits are about. And there's toolkits that are focused more on trout, and there's a toolkit now focused on striped bass, because the state of Maine, it was really cool that the state of Maine gave a big grant to Keep Fish Wet to basically distribute toolkits.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and anyway, I don't want to, but the toolkits are important, and I think that I wanted to mention this earlier, the fact that when you brought up Corrientes and being, no treble hooks, barbless hooks, that's pretty freaking progressive. Yeah. Right? Like,
that's something you only see in like blue ribbon trout streams in North America.
We fight to do that. And that should be more of the standard as opposed to the exception. right? And so I think that's one thing that inspires me to, when folks reach out to me from places like Argentina or Seychelles or Christmas Island or a lot of other places, that that's where recreational fisheries are developing and they're gaining momentum, and there's this impetus and interest to get ahead of the declines and calamities and crashes, so that you're not pointing fingers at at each other about what's happening to the Golden Dorado. That you get everybody on board and you bring in these regulations or social norms early enough that they're commonplace and you're being more proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
And that inspires me. That means that there's more hope here to manage, in my mind, what I see so far. There's more hope here to manage the Golden Dorado fishery than there is to manage the striped bass fishery off the east coast of the United States. And I think that it's inspiring. It also, if you look at the potential for a fishery like this to contribute to the local community, it's pretty cool. And then you also have the guides and community members and people that have been involved in the fishery for a long time being spokespeople for the fish and the environment, and they're willing to advocate for their home waters and their species, and even if they don't fish for them, because they see the power of recreational fisheries as an important component of commerce. And and I think that's another part of what you said was interesting. I think it's okay to feel good about making money out of this, right? Like maybe you're not making millions, but it's part of the private enterprise, to have a company that is a private enterprise also being interested not only just making money but conservation. It demonstrates that those two things can happen simultaneously. I see the same thing in the Seychelles with Alphonse Fishing Company. It means that like Set Fly Fishing is interested in investing in conservation efforts. Is that a bad thing? As long as it's done authentically and sincerely. And that's why when they started reaching out to me, and it's been a slow process of having the conversations and building that trust, and then coming down here and interacting with the guides, and finally having the face-to-face meetings and everything. It's just like, wow, this is legit.
These people are awesome.
These people are awesome, and that the amount of wonderful conversations I've had with the guides, and to see people at the different lodges, and how they the genuine nature of their hospitality and is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Do you believe the work you've done in conservation has built up some good fish karma for you?
I don't know. Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Like a lot of times I'm setting up projects and I get to go. I mean, the first Golden Dorado project in Salta in the Rio Jodimento, I was there for a week or 10 days, and then I left some grad students and volunteers there for a month or a month and a half. Right? They got to fish way more than I did. And that's, slowly, I move along in my career, and my graduate students, and rightfully so, they dive in, they get to do all the research and all the field work. And, but eventually, every once in a while I'm able to go and like on this trip.
Let's talk like the last 2 days. I mean, we got back to Itatí, and I don't know if you were looking at weather, but we were looking at the weather. And last year when the crew was here, the rain, the pressure drop, the river coming up, that's like predatory fish love that that stew of all of those things, and it's like we get here and it's monsooning.
Yeah. All day yesterday. It
all
poured.
day.
It did not stop.
We thought it was going to thunderstorm.
We had thunderstorms in the morning.
We did?
Before we woke up. Yeah.
I'm glad I wasn't on your boat.
That's another story.
I mean, I think people should know why I wouldn't want to be on your boat in a thunderstorm.
Yeah. Yes, I have been struck by lightning. But that's another long story. We don't have enough time.
Oh, it's such a good one. Would you have like a Spark Notes version of that story?
Watch what you wish for.
Yeah.
It was living in the Turks and Caicos Islands, raced off the water, and happened to go to my room. I had like aluminum louvered window shades. There was no glass, and a bolt of lightning hit the tree above my room, arced down, went in my left hand and out my left foot. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff tied to that. There's like we needed a whole new podcast for that.
Well, you were saying too, like you do research on sharks, and there's this thought that like once you're struck by lightning, that sharks are more attracted to you, and you're like wading flats.
I noticed that in the flats. I definitely noticed that in the flats, where the lemon sharks, I could be wading with 3 other people, and the lemon sharks will come over towards me
because you'd been struck by lightning.
It's if you look it up on the internet, you maybe shouldn't do research on the internet. But they do say that when you're struck by lightning, you're more likely to get struck by lightning again. That could be because you're actually doing stupid things like being outside when there's lightning going on.
Yeah.
And then you're more likely to be attacked by a shark because being struck by lightning messes up the polarity of your cells, and sharks have these, they're called ampullae lorenzini, the electromagnetic receptors on their snout, the little pores.
Yeah.
And apparently they can pick up on the fact that something's different. And I did notice it. I mean, I remember wading the flats on South Caicos several months after being struck by lightning. And I remember walking along, and a couple instances. One where, I was wading a whole bunch of other people, and as lemon sharks are cruising around, and all of a sudden they just they come over and check me out. They don't go to anybody else. And I remember another time I was wading, and I was like, man, I really feel like I'm being followed.
Yeah.
And I look behind me, and there's this little lemon shark just at my heels.
Oh my gosh.
But it wasn't like trying to swim around me. Like I was waiting, and I wasn't going at a fast pace, and it was just like cruising behind me. And I'm like, this is really creepy.
Yeah.
So
like Shark Boy now.
Maybe there's some truth to it. I don't know. Yeah.
But back to the off the side tangent, back to the fish karma.
Yeah.
We had the perfect brew of predatory fish. We hadn't caught a big one on the trip yet, and I hear like we have the radios on our backpacks we've been using the whole trip, and it's like I heard a Andy, and I pick up the radio, and I'm like, Jackson, Andy, do you copy? Like, what's going on? Andy, something fish. And I was like, I think the rest of the boats were a little bit, we didn't know where you guys were.
Right, yeah.
We were really not that far away.
Well, it was dark.
It was super dark. It's pitch black. And they're like, what do you think they said? I'm trying to call one of them because I can't hear it on the radio. And I'm like, did you say Andy caught a big fish? And I just hear nothing. And then all of a sudden, like, the call doesn't go through and the radio picks up. And it's like, we're right across from the, like, huge church, like, Citadel. We're going across, like, we're in the middle of the river. We're just going to pull over the bank real quick to get a fin clip, all this stuff. Like, and we just floor it up to you guys. And we get there. I mean, you can tell the fish story.
But even the earlier part of the day started out going to close to the same spot, and I'm an average angler. Like I screw up all the time. I'm impatient. I just whatever. But early morning, got to this spot, first couple casts, and what did I do? I mean, I pulled tight and I did one of these things, right? And I was like, and the guide was just like,
for those who aren't watching on YouTube, the one of these things was a big old trout set.
It wasn't quite a trout set. It was more like, anyway.
The streamer set.
Yeah, it was the streamer set. Anyway, and so, and there was a big, the way that it pulled, it was a huge fish. We saw another one roll. And I was just like, oh my God, this is my last day. This really sucks. And it is what it is. And then we cruised around other parts of the river. We actually found some good spots and had a fairly productive day with, Golden Dorado between 15 to 22, 21 inches. And it was fun. And then, sun starts going down, it's misty, rainy. And our guide, Juan, started making it back out to the rocks. And it was like, okay, it's time to redeem myself, hopefully. And the pressure was on, and I'm like, it's my last day. I'm leaving a day early to go have some meetings in Buenos Aires. And, we set it up, and, it was like the second or third cast, swung the fly in front of these rocks, let it drift, and all of a sudden it came tight, and I apparently did everything right.
Video evidence to prove it. There was no trout set.
It would have been my last cast of the day, and the trip, and it was great. The Golden Dorado jumped a few times. It was awesome, and then that's when we called you, and we're like, yeah, do you want to get some other images of this? Because it's the biggest fish of the trip.
Yeah.
And that's when it all went down, and we figured it out, and I redeemed myself, and the upper Paraná, gave me a gift, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I really do hope that, and it's something I see in North American culture. It's where I get a little bit more philosophical these days. Our interactions with fish, I really hope more people see it as a privilege and not a right.
Yeah.
And I think if we treated our interactions with fish as a privilege, we would hopefully be more inclined to, think about those science-based best practices and how we release them, or thinking about being advocates for their environment and other things. But, when I was interacting with that fish, and then when I was holding it and thinking about the experience, I find it really humbling. And I have that connection with that fish that sort of gave up. I fooled it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fooled it into taking a fly. It gave a bit of its energy to me in that fight. Otherwise, it would have been swimming around and trying to eat sabalo.
Yeah.
And out of respect for that fish, I wanted to keep it in the water. I know we had a couple little lifts, and it was dripping. We tried to minimize the amount of time we handled that fish. But I think that if more anglers felt that way, I think our recreational fisheries would be in much better shape. And I think that's where I hope, whether through the research that I do, or how I help, as the science advisor for Keep Fish Wet, or these other NGOs that I help and assist with, that if we sort of change our lens about how we look at fish and the environment and nature, then maybe there will be hope for future generations.
Yeah.
And that's also where I see social media and things like that as a double-edged sword, where it's unfortunately still the home of the hero shot, and and I think that unfortunately when we think about and I even try to stay away from the word influencers, because you can be a bad influencer, you can be a good influence, right? And so, I hope that we, through efforts, like with Sasha and Keep Fish Wet, and through the science and the training and the mentoring I do with my students, and creating that future generation of scientists that want to continue not only to do good science, but to think about how they use their voice and their energy to communicate what they do to a broader audience and do it in an effective way. And if they do so with this mindset where we think about how humans interface with nature and fish and treat it as a privilege, not as a right, that gives me hope. And the going back to that big undergraduate level fish conservation course that I teach, there are 3 modules, and the second module is water plus fish plus humans. Yeah. And the whole module is really freaking depressing. And I get through that module and the students are like, how can you continue to do what you do? Aren't you just like completely depressed? And looking at how we've kicked the crap out of commercial fisheries, and there's pollution and dams and fragmentation and, you name it, invasive species. I teach all that in that one module. And, the third module is, solutions for sustainability, and thinking about how we change our perceptions about nature and all the different tools that we can use to adequately conserve and manage, in this context in terms of fish, right? Yeah. But I think we need to shift our lens to, in the general public, at looking at nature as something that's there as a privilege, and those resources as something, not to rape and pillage, but to respect and use wisely. We have this natural tendency to over-harvest, overuse, and we can get into philosophical things related to population growth and other stuff. But, I do think that, and I hope that people that are angling, that are fishing, we'll use that as the context, are willing to take more responsibility, and not just rely on thinking that the government's going to save the fish, or God's going to save the fish, and God's, that we have a role to play in the future, whether it's that each individual fish we encounter and how we handle them, how we release them, or what we do with our voice when we see how we vote, how we show up to meetings, how we stand up and use our voices effectively as advocates and activists, and take that responsibility. That I think that's important to remind people of, that we have a responsibility as stewards of this land.
100%.
And I think we do that in our own backyard. But then, through projects like this, I feel inspired by, especially like when people reach out to me, and they want to do more for their environment and their home waters, then, if it comes from the heart, and I see that there's a sincere obligation to, even if there's a for-profit company, to take care of the environment, then I think that gives me hope. So.
Yeah, what a way to. I mean, you're so well spoken. It's been, and what an amazing way to kind of put a bow on our week. I mean, just being around you all week and sharing a boat with you has been a privilege, and I feel like I've learned so much. Cool. And hearing all about what informs a lot of the suggestions and the recommendations and angler responsibility and all some of the tidbits that we covered. A lot of it's tidbits because there's so much.
Yeah.
And hearing about that's so fascinating, and like it took us 2 weeks to cover so much stuff, and there's still so much more to talk about. So I think for anyone more interested, what's a great place for them to find more information, to find you,
Yep.
to see more of your work? Where can they do that?
I've got a pretty rudimentary website. It's fishforward.org. And it covers the teaching, the research. I've done some documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot there.
Yeah. The home water dispatch is great.
Home water dispatch is new. That's sort of, I consider it kind of an extension of my classroom, and I've done some episodes on this trip, and I try to do it place-based, and think about opportunities to reflect and share on experiences and offer tidbits of information for people that don't enroll in my class at UMass, and for people that want to learn more about, you know, how they can be informed advocates, not just advocates, but informed through science and through the stuff that hopefully that I can share, and they can take those little nuggets of information, and the next time they're on a stream bank and they're watching somebody interacting with fish, or they're throwing trash on the ground, or they're having a conversation with somebody at the bar about climate change, they can bring some evidence to the table and be like, you know, let's anyway.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I think one more sip and my ferment and Coke's gone.
I'm drained.
It's getting a little late. I think you have an early flight.
I do.
We have early time on the river. But thanks for sitting down late at night after dinner.
Absolutely.
Long day. It was great sharing a boat with you all week and sharing a little bit with the internet what we talked about on the river all week.
Cool.
So,
I don't have a lot of followers, but Fish Mission
yep.
on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm there.
thanks for joining us.
No problem.